Welcome to another episode of Mission Compliance, Unleashing Growth Potential for Defense Contractors. In today's episode, we continue down the road of understanding a CMMC, its regulations, and controls. Up next is CM.L2-3.4.8. Apply deny by exception blacklisting policy to prevent the use of unauthorized software, or deny all permit by exception whitelisting policy to allow the execution of authorized software. Wow, that's a mouthful. We'll break down what this control means, why it matters, and how it impacts your organization's cybersecurity posture. We'll also provide practical insights and strategies for achieving compliance and securing your systems effectively. So whether you're a defense contractor aiming to win more contracts, or simply someone interested in bolstering your cybersecurity knowledge, you're in the right place. Houston, we have a podcast. We're joined once again today by Mike Frieder, president of On-Call Compliance Solutions and a CMMC professional assessor. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman.
So, Mike, this week we're talking about deny by exception or deny all permit by exception, whitelisting or blacklisting policies. So there's a lot involved in this. Why is this control important?
This control, and control is an apt word, is a critical control more so than I think most people realize when they first go through all of the controls. Um, One of the most risky things that you can do in a network is allow end users to install anything that they want and do anything that they want. And what Control 3.4.8 is about wrestling back control and giving it to the administrators and allowing administrators to control what is done with the network and the computers on that network. And a quick little bit of our history. A couple years ago, we had a gentleman who came to us and he said, "Hey, I see, how your stack is." And he was a new employee with us, a high-level engineer. And he said, "This is great. I think you guys are doing awesome, but." In previous places that I've worked, we had a policy which was we never allowed a client to operate without a policy like this in place. We would never allow a client to be managed by us unless we had an explicit whitelisting policy when it came to software installation. We just won't let anybody install anything whatsoever unless we, the IT people, approve it and have control over the install. And I said, help me understand why that's a good thing. And, he proceeded to explain to me that and if you don't have complete control over what gets installed on every computer in your network, then the reality is bad things can be installed on just one computer and affect the rest of the network. And that is the top entry point for security issues once someone, has penetrated the defenses, which, by the way, is so easy to do. We dealt with an incident earlier this week where a fake-looking email from one of the major primes out there, I'm sure you would know their name if I said it. It was a fake phishing email, not from them, came in. It was a Portuguese real estate company that installed a piece of software called Screen Connect. And then Russian IP addresses were using Screen Connect to manipulate this machine. Fortunately, again, our software had it shut down within seconds, created logs of it so we could go and trace it back. And, we basically stopped the breach before it really ever happened. But, and believe me, that was a scary one, right? The end user gave permission for that software to be installed. Um, you know, that's the kind of stuff that we just can't allow. And so to that extent, one of the things that we now authorize as a mandatory thing is we actually use a piece of software called Threat Locker. We're really, really big fans of what Threat Locker does. It, from an agent-based perspective, will not allow anything net new to run on the machine. So that's installation of anything net new, but also the execution of anything net new, even if it hasn't been installed, things like your mobile code or a rogue script or an impersonating program that might have the incorrect hash. It will deny anything from running that has not been explicitly approved to run during a learning period or during an explicit and inclusive, exception. So, yeah, what this control is really all about is making it so that, past a given point in time when this is implemented, you have total control over anything net new executing, which can stop zero-day attacks. And if you don't know what a zero-day attack is, a zero-day attack is an attack that has not been discovered by security researchers. That's why, zero day means like first day that it's really ever been used and put into action. A lot of malware is net new. So in other words, they haven't come up with a heuristic or definition based solution to fix it yet. And yeah, basically, it will stop those in its tracks by not allowing anything that's not already known to execute. The big difference in why this particular application was able to execute was because the machine already had a Screen Connect client on it, which is kind of ironic. So there wasn't anything that new, but who was controlling it was, but they actually had to get a user to install it and run it. So again, it is something that is exceptionally handy. Again, if they had been using any other program than a pre-existing program on the machine, they wouldn't have been able to do it. A little bit of a lucky guess on the attacker's part, but at the same time, it then stopped any other script from executing that was net new. So it stopped PowerShell script attempts, and they were trying to rapidly execute a whole bunch of stuff as soon as they connected. It happened very quickly, but again, threat locker and the concept of a whitelisting policy in place stopped unknown programs from being able to run. And boy, that is, if that story doesn't, get your skin tingling a little bit, um, we were probably minutes away from realistically, information exfiltration, ransomware, you name it, who knows, but some really, really bad stuff. So, with that in mind, 348, when implemented correctly, can be a huge part of your security fabric and framework.
Absolutely. So let's dig into a little bit more. What are the key assessment points that an assessor would be looking for on this particular control?
Yeah, great question. So there's actually, believe it or not, only three of them because it's really a pretty simple control. First, it's determining if a policy specifying whether whitelisting or blacklisting is to be implemented as specified. What does that mean? Well, it means that you have to basically have a policy that dictates whether you're going to use blacklisting or whitelisting. And it's really that simple, right? It's a written policy. And yeah, you just have to choose blacklisting or whitelisting. Which one is easier to implement? You know what? Blacklisting is easier to implement because that's where you specify what won't be allowed to run. But whitelisting is really the right solution, I think, for most defense contractors. Now, examples of blacklisting versus whitelisting. Antivirus can be a great blacklisting solution. They have definitions and they say, hey, if a program matches these characteristics, don't let it run. That's blacklisting. The problem with that is if the attack is an unknown attack, what's to say that it's something bad? Now, whitelisting, on the other hand, is the opposite. Threat Locker is a great example. You can also use group policy to disallow software installation. I prefer Threat Locker versus the group policy method now that I know more about it, because ultimately, it's not just installation that's the problem. It's also running of an unknown program because not all programs need installation. So what whitelisting does is it says these are the programs which are allowed to run. Anything other than these specific programs cannot run. That's much safer than just having a list that we hope is a good list of things that can't run. So assessment point number two, determine if the software allowed to execute under whitelisting or denied use under blacklisting is specified. So do we have a list of what software is allowed to run? And again, we might say something to the extent of software allowed by whitelist permit is specified in the organization's baseline configuration and network inventory documentation. So again, we typically will have a baseline configuration that says these pieces of software will be installed on the system. And if they are not installed on the system, then, well, they shouldn't be there. Or there must be a documented exception. So for instance, a ticket or a threat locker log file that shows where it was approved to be run. So this one's all like about documentation and proving things through determination if the software is allowed to execute or if it's not. Next, final one is determine if whitelisting to allow the execution of authorized software or blacklisting to prevent the use of unauthorized software is implemented as specified. So now the auditors can actually go and look and see what is actually implemented in the network, right? What's the solution you're using? It could be group policy, it could be threat locker, it could be, boy, tons of solutions out there. Carbon Black if you use VMware, lots and lots and lots of solutions. But again, we might give an answer like group policy is restricting execution of unauthorized, authorized is implemented. Users may only execute whitelisted permitted software for which user account has access, which is granted by privileged IT administrators. So another one of those answers could look like something to the extent of threat lockers in place to prevent the use of any unknown software. Only whitelisted software is allowed to execute through threat locker. So lots and lots of options there. But yeah, those are the three assessment points. And yeah, two sets of documentation and one actual implementation on this one.
Right. So just for layman's terms, so I can see if I understand it, and then for layman's terms for our audience. So are blacklisting and whitelisting basically the opposite of one another? Blacklisting being, all right, we're gonna, based on the solution or whatever the software is, we're gonna deny it if it meets this criteria. And then whitelisting is deny everything, and then we'll do that. We'll allow certain things by that same standard of kind of blacklisting. If it meets these criteria, we'll allow it. Is that kind of
I think the effect is similar, but so whitelisting is what is called a permit-only solution. So, and we do this on firewalls all the time. We whitelist what ports and protocols can go through the firewall. So, whitelisted software is where you actually have a list of software in a program like ThreatLocker, and that's the only software that can execute on the machine. And it can be learned, right? So there's a learning mode in Threat Locker. You turn on the learning mode, and then whatever executes during that period of time while learning mode is on is okay. And then you turn off learning mode, and nothing besides what ran during the learning mode will be permitted. So whitelisting is permit only by list.
okay,
Blacklist
cool.
is the opposite. Blacklist is you're only denying what's on the deny list. Anything else can run as long as it's not on the deny list. And you start to kind of understand why whitelisting, one, way safer, but here's the bad news. It's a lot more overhead on the IT team because now every time somebody wants to execute something new or program updates, you're going to have to actually manually by human approve that to be allowed to run. So it's a little bit of an unpopular solution unless security is really of the essence. But
Okay.
let's be honest, if you own a business or you're running a business and you depend upon your computers, which is pretty much every business, well, then it's probably worth the extra little bit of time it takes to make sure that what's running on your network is actually authorized via a whitelist.
There's a lot of verbiage and wording in this control, so it always helps to drill down a little bit more. So what are the potential difficulties? You mentioned that blacklisting might be a little bit easier to add in than whitelisting would be. But what are the potential difficulties of enacting this one in an organization?
Great question. So, believe it or not, as I often explain, the biggest challenge is a cultural challenge. Um, it's not implementing the software. You just buy the license, install, run, boom, you're good to go. It is, hey, wait a minute. I used to be able to install software myself, no problem at all. This is really hindering my productivity. I have to go to the IT guy anytime I want something running. It's a huge, huge hassle for most people. And they really, really don't like it. And they go complain to the boss. The boss goes, give this guy what he needs to do his job. And the reality is, most people who are running departments are more concerned with their people being productive and happy than they are with the overall security of the operation. And that is the wrong mindset. Certainly in defense, that's the wrong mindset. There are some industries where that's the right mindset. But anytime you have something that really needs to be secure, perhaps you're innovating, whatever it may be, for sure, 1000%. This is how it should be. But it is a hassle. So that's a thing.
Absolutely. So, this is the point of the podcast where we have our silly question, and admittedly, this one is kind of stupid, but I like it. Uh, so our silly question for this one, we're talking about whitelisting and blacklisting, and that one is a permit by exception, one is, deny, this kind of thing. Um, if whitelisting and blacklisting acted like entry to an exclusive club, what kind of club would that be? And I'll add onto that a little one step further. Who would be the bouncer of that club?
Ooh, so we're talking about blacklisting or whitelisting.
Yes,
So
both,
each.
but both individually. So if they acted like an exclusive club, uh,
Gotcha. I got
you
it.
know,
I got it. So I would feel like blacklisting would be like, what do you not let in here? Blacklisting is kind of like going to I have a terrible example because it's an example that's top of mind for me right now. There's this place called K1 Indoor Karting, right? Because you guys know I'm a racing guy.
Oh.
At K1 Karting, if you have a kid that's under 8 years old, which I happen to have a kid under 8 years old, they can't go karting. No fun is allowed for them, and they are essentially blacklisted because of age. So it's an age restriction. They say you are blacklisted because you don't meet the criteria for coming in here. But anybody else who is not, below the age of 8, anybody can come and have fun and drive, even if they can't drive, even if they're legally blind. They can still come and they can race go-karts. And I'm pretty convinced half the room is legally blind when I go there. Um, Now, on the other hand, whitelisting would be like a black tie gala. It's by invitation only. They already know ahead of time who's coming, and nobody from the outside would ever have a seat at the table because you had to have a reservation to get in there. So, great question, actually. It's nice to have a real world example of what the difference is between blacklisting and whitelisting. And, who doesn't love a really, really great party, especially, getting dressed up and fancy, showing up to the party, and you know what? You're allowed in because you're on the white list.
As compared to the on-call holiday party where everybody was wearing jeans.
That's right.
But that was actually a good example. I've been go-karting once in my life. It was fantastic, but it actually ended up being a pretty significant um, pileup, a pretty significant accident that I did not cause, but I was involved in, and it actually did kind of scare me off of go-karting for a very short period of time. But everybody was okay. But there was a significant pile up in that at that go-kart track. But anyway, that wraps up another great episode of Mission Compliance. We hope our discussion today has provided you with valuable insights, practical strategies, and inspiration to navigate the ever-evolving world of defense. And our next control episode, we're gonna jump off controls for an episode, but we're gonna be back. Our next control episode is the final control of control
What?
family number 4. So 4 down, 10 to go.
What are we gonna do when we run out of controls?
Well, that's gonna be a couple of years from now. So we'll figure it out. We'd like to thank Mike for joining us talking about the importance and the difference between blacklisting and whitelisting. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman.
But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and connect with us via our social media channels. Share your thoughts, ask questions, and engage with fellow listeners using the hashtag Mission Compliance Podcast. If they haven't already, what should they do, Mike?
Well, sir, they should like, subscribe, and most importantly, tell a friend in the defense industry because you know what? Around here, we're helping out everybody.
That's correct. We try to. Subscribe. You heard Mike. Subscribe to your favorite on your favorite podcast platform so you know when new episodes like this one are released. We truly appreciate if you could take a moment to rate and review the show. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you thought-provoking episodes and high-quality content. Join us next time as we delve further into the dynamic world of defense, security, and industry innovation. Until then, take care, stay informed, and make compliance your mission. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.